Hello everybody and welcome back, and we're going to begin with the crew, who have expanded their number with the addition of Mossy, a halfling, and Easton, a mage, and they've just passed by this rank subterranean swamp-like area where there were newly born skanks being created in these bubbles. The smell was awful, but as they move up this narrow, tight passageway, Mossy says, "Ugh, there's another smelly bit coming up." And she adds, "We'd better get our weapons ready because we got jumped by these creatures." The crew look at her and say, "What creatures?" And she describes giant centipedes with tentacles. Easton says they were carrion crawlers. There were 2 of them. Archie asks, "Well, how did you escape?" And Mossy says, "Well, they jumped our captors and we picked up a torch and ran." Barton says, "I think it's about time you told us how you escaped, especially if it will help us." And so Mossy and Easton describe their escape from the prison above, and apparently it wasn't that difficult. One day, when everybody was eating, 2 skanks came in and simply unlocked their manacles and told them to get up and follow them. Of course, this attracted the attention of all the other prisoners in the mess hall. No explanation was given, and they were simply led over the bridge in this direction here. That was the last that anybody in the prison area saw of them. So what happened? Well, they were led down a narrow, rough passage, of which they have seen most of, and as they were going, they came to an area where there was a side junction, and the smell coming from that side junction was terrible. But they didn't have time to think about that, because coming out of that side junction, actually on the ceiling, were 2 carrion crawlers. These carrion crawlers attacked the skanks that were escorting Mossy and Easton. That's when they saw their chance to run. They picked up a torch each and they ran into, well, the narrow passage. They ran past the swamp area and they just kept running. And they spent several days trying to preserve their torch, trying to sneak out into the mining area when the miners left, finding anything they could, including the stub ends of other used torches, bits of dropped food, anything they could scavenge. Well, they were living that life until they were rescued by the crew. Of course, this begs the question, where were they taking you to? Neither Easton or Mossy can think of anywhere. It is Archie who pipes up and says, "Do you think they were taking you to that manky pond where the other creatures were inside those bubbles?" And Easton, who is the smartest of them, thinks for a minute, pulls a rather sickening face and says, "Yes, actually, I think they were taking us to there. If those creatures in those bubbles were being formed, and that is how they are made, well, when they come out of those bubbles, they will need something to eat." And Mossy looks horrified. She says, "Were they taking us there to be eaten by those creatures in those bubbles?" And Easton just shrugs and says, "I don't know what they were doing, but when you think about it, that's probably the only explanation." That is the backstory of how Easton and Mossy got to be where they are, but they are kind of able to warn the party about the side passage that leads to a really smelly area and how they should get their weapons ready when passing by it in case these carrion crawlers appear. At least they won't be taken by surprise. So when the party reach that area and they can see the side passage, they immediately crawl to their usual 60 feet for every 10 minutes, watching carefully, trying to move carefully, trying to not make any sound, looking up at the ceiling. They don't see anything, but from this side passage, where indeed the smell is disgusting, they hear a cry, and it is the cry of a human voice. Right, somebody needs rescued. As much as they don't want to, they go up into this passageway, and sure enough, there's a massive rubbish heap of decaying meat, probably effluent as well, bones, bits of burnt food, scraps. This is a rubbish pit. It is a decaying rubbish pit that has been here for some time, and yet it smells terrible. There, standing in the middle of the pit, being attacked by at least 1 carrion crawler, is a small, rather emaciated person. And we have surprise because the carrion crawler is on him, so let us take advantage of that surprise. And we'll start with missiles. So I shall do Archie. 6. He hits armor class 8. A carrion crawler has armor class 7. I shall do Mossy. She has a ranged attack of 13. She hits armor class 5 and she hits hard. That carrion crawler is from 20 to 14. This gives Barton a chance for a swipe. And he hits armor class 5 and he does d6 plus 2, so that's 7. That carrion crawler is at 7. And I will do Kane. Yes, who almost rolls max everything, and yep, that carrion crawler gets chopped in half even before it can tell what's going on. Well done, boys. However, in their haste, they didn't look upward. There is no surprise. Let's roll for initiative. We get initiative. A carrion crawler drops from the ceiling, and it's a chance for us to attack it. Luckily, it's slightly smaller. Archie hits, does 1 damage. It's down to 16. Mossy. Yes, it's down to 12. Barton. Okay, it's down to 9. Kane. Oh, his melee attack was 12. He just misses. Right, this carrion crawler is either going to attack Kane or Barton. Whoever rolls lowest. That's Barton. Good. He has the higher armor class. A carrion crawler has a attack of 16. Barton's armor class is -1, so it needs 17 to hit him. That's 2 misses. That's 4 misses. 1 hit. 1 hit. Right, can Barton make a saving throw versus paralysis? He needs a 12 or more. Yes, he does. Right, that was its go. So round number 2. We get initiative again. Mossy. Yes, that carrion crawler is down to 3. Archie. Look at that. It's dead. Honestly, the dice rolls of this crew are remarkable. They have sailed through every encounter with much more ease than the main party. Okay, there is a human who has fallen over in a paralysed state on top of this absolutely disgusting heap. And indeed there's refuse and effluent on top of him. He has to be dragged out of there and we have to wait for the paralysis to wear off. And so that is what the crew will do. And I'm sure we'll find out about his story when the paralysis wears off. The party are sitting at the same table during the one and only mealtime. There is just enough food to stave off hunger, but no more. Malin, Liz and Sylvia each scrape a little bit of their food into Big Tybor's bowl on cue when somebody else distracts him. And that's even after Malin, who works in the kitchen, gives him a bit more. Never has the big guy looked so miserable. For nearly all of their adventures, the party have eaten together every day. Spending their days forced apart has created a hole they need to fill at every mealtime. Their conversation is disrupted when someone plonks his bowl onto their table and sits himself down. This is not unusual as it's a shared space and other prisoners often stop by and whisper to them about escape plans, but the urgency with which this prisoner sat down makes them stop eating. "You're the ones that are going to get us out of here," he says nervously. The man is haggard and lean. It's like he's made of a single twitching sinew. "And you, miss," he points at Liz, "you can get me out of these manacles." Liz nods, wondering where this conversation is going. Donard demands, "Show us your wrists." The man laughs and freely shows the party the inside of his wrists. "No tattoo, see? You're looking for that octopus thing with the 3 tentacles. Not on me, but I know it. The men that jumped me outside Kelvin had it, dragged me from Kelvin all the way to here, crossed the damn sea. I have a wife and kids at home that need me." "I'm so sorry," says Sylvia. "We'll make sure you get back." "Yeah?" questions the nervous man. "Well, I'm not so sure your plan will work, and I don't have time to wait for it. I need out of here soon, and I have my own plan." "You won't survive this island alone," says Maradin. "I just made it, and I had weapons. Best wait for all of us to go at the same time." "But I don't have time," the man blurts out, his agitation increasing. "They'll come for me next." "What do you mean?" asks Malin. "I notice everything," the man says, shakily stirring his stew. "Take these cat people. The skanks sometimes capture them and bring them in, then they take them away again. Later on, some new skanks appear, looking like deformed cats. Well, put that together, and what do you think is going on?" "I kind of figured that one out myself," says Malin. "Yeah, but what about the fact that some of us disappear just before that? It's always the weak ones they take." "Explain yourself," asks Carrick. "The skanks walk among us, usually after dinner, and unchain a couple of us. The ones they choose are taken away and never seen again. Only a couple of weeks ago, we had this lad, magic lad like yourself," he nods to Malin. "He had a bad back and couldn't work, and a wee halfling lassie. They chose them and took them away. Never seen them since. Where did they go? I've worked that out." He pauses. "Look at me," he implores. "I'm getting weaker every day here. I'll be next." "We can try and hide you," says Sylvia. "I can try and give you some more food," says Malin. The man emphatically shakes his head. He talks, jabbing a finger at each of the party. "I have my own escape plan. I just need your help to get out of these chains." "And what if we're not inclined to help you?" says Donard. The man, for the first time, gains control of himself and stares steadily back at the cleric. "You wouldn't want your escape plans to reach the ears of these skanks, would you?" "You treacherous little snake," says Donard calmly. "All I'm asking you to do is unlock my chains," he says back, a lot less nervous once he feels he's on the front foot in this bargain. "Only if you tell us what your plan is," says Liz. "That's fair." The man nods in agreement. "Fair enough, since you're a part of my plan. You know the hole over the rubbish pit? I know you know, because you dump a wheelbarrow of kitchen waste into it every day. Well, I'm going to get into that barrow and you're going to cover me with stuff. Then you're going to wheel me over to that hole and turf me into it." For the first time in days, Carrick almost laughs. "You're mad. You'll die when you hit the bottom." "No, I won't," the man insists. "It's not that far of a drop, and the heap of stuff below will give me a soft landing." "But where will you go next?" asks the dwarf. "You'll have to climb back out again." The man shakes his head emphatically. "Nope, I've done the wheelbarrow myself, only I'm the only one who's bothered to look into that hole. I swear I've seen things move in a breeze. There's a passage down there." "It's pitch black down there," says Liz. "How did you see anything?" The man nods towards Donard. "I borrowed one of those light pebbles you've been making, and I dropped it down there. I could see clearly." He's referring to the pebbles Donard has been diligently casting his continual light spells on every evening. Donard's jaw visibly clenches. "You could have ruined everything," he hisses. "That was foolish." "Don't worry," says the man. "I tipped a barrel full of trash on top of it. No one can see it." There is a pause as the conversation reaches a standoff. "I agree with you," says Donard. "We need to throw you into that hole. You're a liability. The sooner you're gone, the better." "I don't care how you see it," says the nervous man. "I'm just glad to hear you're on board." The next day, reluctantly and with much caution, they carry out this unfortunate man's plan. Liz unpicks his chains. He hides, curled up at the bottom of the wheelbarrow. Trash is heaped on top of him to cover him. Some prisoners wheel him over to the refuse hole and throw him in. They report back that they heard him land. They waited for a moment and he called up that he's fine, though he sounded winded. It seems the first part of his plan worked. "He'll die down there," says Donard flatly. "Regardless, I don't like this. Everyone here is desperate. Others will get the mad idea and demand to follow him. This could ruin everything. Then we need to move quickly," says Carrick, "and get our thinking caps on." You have probably guessed that the same man the crew has rescued is the same man who threw himself down the rubbish pit. He has been paralysed by a carrion crawler. That does not mean he is unconscious. He is perfectly aware of what is going on, even though he can't move or speak. He can see and hear, and he has gleaned enough from the conversation between Mossy, Easton and the crew to kind of what is going on. So when he comes out of the paralysis, he is more than thankful to see them. Mossy and Easton don't recognise him. He was a rather insignificant, unremarkable prisoner amongst another 100 of them. But he does start celebrating the fact that he was right. He was right, he keeps saying, I'm right, there was a passage out of here, let's get out of here. Of course, the crew aren't going anywhere but upward. And in return for helping him, they're going to ask him to kind of show them or tell them what he knows. Also, as Easton points out, these tunnels are pitch black and you'll probably fall into a swamp or break your back. And that reminds the man that he has a light pebble which he threw down the hole a couple of days before. And so he runs back into the refuse cave and starts scrabbling through all the rotted food and bits of animal skin and even effluent. At this time, he doesn't worry about the smell. The crew follow him because they wonder what has suddenly possessed him, and eventually he pulls out the light pebble. It's sort of easy to find once it's been vaguely uncovered because, well, it glows. And they ask, where did you get that? And it is Archie who asks, was it a cleric who cast the light spell? And Barton nods along saying, yep, that looks like a spell. And this man says, yes, it was. And Archie describes a reasonably tall cleric who never smiles and looks at you like you're daft. And the man nods again and says, yep. And everybody realises that means Donard. So after some more conversation, the crew are more than delighted to realise that the party are still alive. And also, when they look upward at the hole where the refuse gets tipped into, they realise they're only a few feet from the surface. This man is extremely reluctant to go back up there. He just wants to run out of these caverns. The party will give him a clue how to get there back outside if he shows them to the surface and points out what is what. That is what happens. The refuse pit is around here, and the party emerge from this little crack here. So they have come out from behind the skunk's quarters. The first thing they do is Archie shutters the lantern and they tell the man to put his light pebble away. This place, as I've said before, is lit mostly by this lava chamber. That makes it quite red and gloomy, so everywhere which is in shadow is almost in complete blackness. This is good for Archie. He will have to do some sneaking, but the crew creep around here as best as they can. In fact, it will just be Archie and this rather demented, excited man. And he will point out several of the features, including the forges and the prison camp and this building here and the refuse pit, which I shall draw in as though it was always there. Given that they have established the party is still alive, Archie will ask, is there a dwarf in the forges? And the man says there are several dwarves, including one that likes singing. This is the nearest point of contact. The crew will gather here at the entrance to the crack. Archie will say what he thinks is going on, and he is going to try and sneak round here, round the base of this escarpment, and into a forge to see if he can contact Carrick. I won't make a move silently check, as there is a lot of work going on and noise is not an issue. However, he will have to make a hide in shadows. That is normally just 35 for a level 6 thief. I will give him a bonus of 30% because two things, nobody is really looking in this direction and this room is very dark. So let's see how he does. Right, and he throws a 99. Okay, right. I don't think you can get worse than that. Right, Archie is not hidden in shadows, but has anybody looked his way? I will roll a percentage dice for the skanks, and if it is over 50, then yes, one skank will have seen him. And it's 33. No, so he isn't hidden in shadows, but luckily nobody has seen him. So he's looking back at the crew and they're beckoning him to come back again because they can see him. So Archie goes back and they say, you failed at that. You were as clear as day. Okay, he's going to try again, right? He's going to creep round to the corner and he's going to make another hide in shadows roll to get to this rock face here. And that is 98, right? Okay. So, will he be seen this second time? If it's below 50, he makes it. So is this going to be a 4 or less? Yes, it's a 35. So he looks around at the crew and gives another double thumbs up, and they beckon him back again, going no. Doing this with their eyes. So Archie has to go back again for a third time. He has to gather himself. Okay, right Archie, can you make a roll of 65 or less to get to here? 1, yes. Now that is an extremely good roll. So yep, this time, almost like a cat, he creeps along to the other side of this rock face here. Can he make it to this forge? 55. Yes, he can. Right, so finally, Archie makes it into the forge. Carrick and Gareth Ironhand are working away, and all of a sudden they hear this little psst. Archie creeps into the forge. Now what does Carrick make of that? Carrick does not jump out of his skin when he hears Archie little psst, because everybody is talking to each other in whispers, planning and scheming. However, his eyes do widen when he sees it's the cabin boy. And he goes, oh my god laddie, what you doing here? Come in quick and hide yourself. And Archie comes into the forge. This is a workshop. There's a lot of molten metal, workbenches, anvils, racks of tools, things like that. Carrick forces Archie down behind a workbench and tells him to talk from there. And every so often a skank walks in, has a look and then walks out again. They're constantly patrolling here. Okay, keep yourself low, tell me everything. And Archie really doesn't have much to say apart from the fact that it was their job to follow the party, make sure they didn't get into trouble. They did find a back way up and they've met 2 ex-prisoners. Well, 3 ex-prisoners. That strange little man has run off, by the way. Will he make it out into the jungle? Probably. He's going through an empty passageway. Will he survive the jungle? Probably not. But I digress. After Archie fills in his story, Carrick thinks, oh, this changes everything. Oh, this changes everything. Right, son, don't get yourself into trouble too soon. There's a lot to do. Right, I think it's best you go back to the others. Come back tomorrow and I'll tell you what is what. And he gives Archie the best times to come back here when the skanks are basically doing a changing of the guard. They do patrol in and out of this area, keeping an eye on the forges. So Archie thinks, is that all you want? I mean, we risked a lot coming here. And Carrick says, well, take our time. The fact that you're here is such good news. Oh, right. When I get back to the others at dinner tonight, we can make some plans. And you meet me here tomorrow at the time I've told you, and I'll tell you exactly what you need to do. Oh boy. And the dwarf starts rubbing his hands and said, oh boy, we'll show this lot who is who, right? Okay, so it's up to Archie to sneak back again, right? He does say to Carrick, can you watch me as I go? I've kind of fluffed this a couple of times. And Carrick says, I'll give you a signal if I can still see you. So Archie sneaks off again. And yes, 23, he's found his mojo. And he goes back to the others who are here and he relays the news they should stay low for a day until they're given orders. And also, it might take a couple of days to get all the pieces together to put a plan when they get a plan in action. So at dinner time, Carrick is back with the rest of the party. He tells them the news that help is on the way. Well, at least there is a small team of crew members on the other side of the Skanks building. He also mentions that they met a halfling and a mage with a bad back, and some others do remember Mossy and Easton, and they're more than glad. So the party try to remember what their equipment list was. Apart from the obvious weapons and armor, what else did they have that was useful? I did write all of this on a page one day. I think I made it as a slide as well. I might try and find that slide and put it up again. Two things which seem obvious will be the best day to try and make a prison break is when the parade is on. It does mean that the evil party will be watching from here, but remember, beyond the light of torches, this area is almost in complete darkness. Invisibility will play a huge part. And we have an invisibility 10-foot radius spell, 2 invisibility spells, and somewhere in the equipment are 2 potions of invisibility. Right, Phantasmal Force, that will probably play a part, as will Haste, Fireball. They ask the other adventurers who are caught up what they have. There's just Ava the Cleric who has 2 Cure Light Wounds spells. She can stay behind with the rest of the prisoners. There was a level 5 mage called Roan, and he has some spells still in his brain he hasn't cast, and he also has a Phantasmal Force, and that is another useful spell. So a plan is forming, but what do they want Archie to do? They want Archie to get the keys from the guardhouse. And then they think if they can make an impression of the keys, they can cast up a lot of them and distribute those around the prisoners so they can release the chains. How are they going to make a cast of the keys? Well, what they can do is they can ask Archie to steal the keys during a time of the day when the keys aren't being used, and then they can press those keys into a mold to make an impression of them, and then Archie can return the keys so nobody knows, and from those molds they can cast up a lot of keys. How are they going to make a mold? Well, there isn't any clay. This is a very dry area, but there's a lot of grit, and in order to work with the leather, they do boil a lot of animal bones to make a kind of glue. So a combination of dust and glue could make a clay-like substance, and if they can make little wooden trays to pour this glue into, they only have to be bigger than a key, then either Archie can bring the keys to them and they can make the mold, or else Archie can bring the molds to the keys and do it that way. But a plan is forming, and also Donard wants to pass a message on to Barton via Carrick and Archie, of course, to remind them that Silence spell will be optimal for sneaking work, so do cast Silence on Archie. So it's up to whoever is making the rope for this ascent here, where Liz has been diligently, as the days go by, knocking in some spikes, probably once every 10 or 20 feet, so she's nearly up to about here. The next parade day, they think, will be probably in about 2 to 3 days, so it's more continual light spells to create more of these light pebbles. It's all hands on deck, making more rope and also using bits of bed to make these little trays for the clay impressions for the keys. Right, there's a lot to be going on here. I have a plan. I think it will work. It should work. But just seeing Archie has changed everything. Everybody goes to bed with their brains churning over, trying to get all these pieces together into one plan and hopefully destroy this place. Right, I think I will leave it here for today, and perhaps next time we'll see how it all goes. And we'll see you then.